I'm drowning. I'm drowning. Wait a second. This is solid ground. How the hell was I drowning? Anyway, we're going into r/entitledparents. Like and subscribe to get me to 2,000 subscribers. So, and when I get to 2,000 subscribers, I'll read a Harry Potter book just to spite J.K. Rowling. Now, without further ado, let's get started. Our first story I wasn't originally going to cover, but there have been a few updates to the situation, so might as well cover it now. Now, my mom stole $8,000 from me and opened credit cards in my name. I haven't talked to my mom for a little over 1 year now, but this is the story of my mom's lies. Growing up, my mom was always in and out of jail for stealing. Last time she was arrested was in 2015. I was 19 at that time. She always said she stole to provide for our family, but we never lived in a stable home. She would just blow money on expensive gifts and tell us we aren't poor because we have this. How many poor kids have this? As we lived from hotel to hotel, growing up, I became the financially responsible child. I worked multiple jobs, got good grades, and community service. I was able to save up $8,500 for college with multiple scholarships. During my hard work in high school, I also helped my mom with bills and paying whatever she needed help with. When I left for college, she was arrested again and had to be dropped off states away by my aunt for my first day of college. I asked my mom for my college money, and she said she would transfer the money when she got out. When she got out, it all magically disappeared. She blamed my dead grandmother for stealing my money. In 2019, I discovered all these issues, and she comforted me and asked for more money. I gave her more money. I graduated with my BA and went to grad school. I was able to be in grad school for 1 year with my savings before I needed to take Grad Plus loans out. I applied, but I was denied due to all the negative items on my credit score. My mom just told me to pay it off. I didn't. I dropped out instead. I was devastated, but I wasn't going to pay for other people's fun ride. I called all the credit companies and got the address for their credit cards. It was my mom's address. When confronted, she broke down saying it was my grandmother and saying how dare I blame her for this. She demanded an apology and didn't speak to me for a week. My grandmother died before all the credit cards were open. I filed a police report against my mother. She doesn't know yet, but when she finds out, I am sure I will receive the best kind of text message. We stopped talking for another reason. Edit for all of the comments. I have not spoken to my mother for a year, or almost 2 years now. She has been blocked on everything. The reason we do not talk is on a previous post I made about how happy I am my boyfriend ruined my relationship with her. To all the comments asking why I kept giving her money, it was hard. It was either help with the bills or have no electricity, water, gas, or roof over mine and my brother's head. I didn't want to be homeless again, and I didn't want my brother to suffer either. I felt like I needed to help my family because for so long I had the mentality that blood was thicker than water. I now know it isn't my responsibility. I was just young and thought I was doing the best I could to provide for my family from the ages of 16 to 23. I am 26 now. But as I said at the start of this, there were 2 updates. Update: my mom stole $8,000 from me and opened credit cards in my name. So this may not be the update everyone wanted to hear. I didn't get justice. She hasn't been arrested, and no charges at this time. I still do have a police report, but I'm not going to push the police to go and make an arrest. This update is just more information I have recently discovered. More context. It wasn't just always my mom, my brother, and I. When I was born, I shared a small 3-bedroom apartment with my grandmother, her husband, my aunt. In high school, my mom, me, and my little brother followed. My aunt went with no contact with the family in her later 20s, and I never knew why. It hurt to lose someone I was close with. I heard horrible rumors of things my aunt was doing from my mom, and my mom would also let me know awful things my aunt was saying about me. My aunt was on and off in my life after this no contact. Well, fast forward to the present, I reached out to my aunt to meet her. We talked and got everything cleared. My mom stole my aunt's and her father's identity. My aunt had a lot of debt she didn't know about, and when she found out it was my mom, she pressed charges. This was the second time she was arrested. My aunt's husband, who was a cop, arrested her. I knew he hated my mom, but never knew why. My aunt then gave me a list of family members who she also stole their identities, and everyone in the family knew it was going to happen to me and my little brother. The issue was how they were going to stop her. She was our mom. My aunt told me she wished my mom would have given us up, so my brother and I could have lived with her and had a normal life. I don't know why, but those words broke me so much. To know that I had family that knew we were being hurt, but couldn't do much to help us. To know they wanted to save me and my brother. My aunt then proceeded to tell my father, tried to go to court to have my SSN changed and locked till I was 18. This way my mom couldn't steal my identity. It obviously didn't work, and here I am. She told me how happy and proud she was of me. She told me she struggled when she went no contact, because she felt like she left her babies behind, and was afraid about how we would turn out. I love my aunt, and I'm so happy I reached out. I'm even more angry with my mom. How badly she isolated us into her own delusional world, and in the end destroyed our relationship. I told my aunt I didn't care that we struggled in poverty. I don't blame her for that. I blame her for how she handled it, and put so much pressure on 2 children to become billionaires for her to continue her reckless spending. But wait, there's another update to this story, so let's get going on that. Update 2. My mom opened credit cards in my name. I am a ball of rage. I had to recently unfreeze my credit account to apply for care credit to get an emergency surgery done. Not even 2 months of unfreezing my credit, my mom applied for a new credit card in my name. I am done. I always had a piece in me that didn't want to press charges or push for it because it was rough times in our lives, and I knew she was struggling to raise us. But now I see no excuse other than she just doesn't want the responsibility of living within her means. It has been 2 to 3 years of no contact. 1, I would like to say F you to Chase Bank. The card was being opened with them, and when I called to let them know it wasn't me, they told me they will see if they can close the account, but need a police report first. I asked for the address to confirm it was my mom, and they kept denying my request for their address. I only got it confirmed after I told the operator that I guess the darn address would just give me a yes or no. He agreed, and it was my mom's address. I am away for surgery for a while, but when I get back home, I am going to the police to request to speak with a prosecutor. I am done. I'm hurt, and I'm done. I did my frickin' best to raise my credit score to where it is now. I did my best to work multiple jobs to help pay the bills. I did my best to be her emotional support, no matter how bad she treated me. I feel like this next step will be cutting this one string I left connected to her out of sympathy, and of course, it led to me being taken advantage of again. I hope to give an update on if the courts will be on my side. Edit. I'm sadly states away for the surgery, which is why I'm waiting till the surgery is over, and I'm back home recovering. I don't know if I can file a report in the state I am in, and it still be effective in the state I live. I know jurisdiction can be a problem. Edit 2. Thank you for the advice, everyone. I will be pressing charges right away. My boyfriend is an attorney, but he doesn't work in the public area. I do have friends from my law school days that actually work in our county prosecutor office, so I may reach out to them for some advice. They just passed the bar and are slowly getting into the routine. I also don't like to bring this up much to passive friends because it's embarrassing. My mom and I haven't spoke in almost 2 or 3 years. It feels so long ago, and I really don't know the timeline. Questions why I haven't pushed for charges before, and why I keep letting this happen. I really don't know if many will understand it, but I have been conditioned to fear my mom. From a young age, she would punish me for not acting, speaking, or thinking a certain way. If she thought I had a negative thought about her, I was hit and yelled at. I had to beg and cry and comfort her that it wasn't true. After it was over, I would have to hold my mom and comfort her through my own tears. The fear has also been real, even after cutting contact. It has stopped, thankfully, but I have been afraid if I make this move, it will start again. What do I mean? She threatened to get my boyfriend and friends expelled from law school if they kept associating with me. We had to call the school and have a talk about my mom. She then threatened to report me to the IRS for tax fraud, but I always paid my taxes. She sent messages to my workplace when I was a kid. I would be in the back seat as she drove past people she hated houses over and over to see what they were doing. The fear that she could find where I live and do this makes my stomach turn. I was afraid to push these charges in the past because I wanted to leave it behind and continue the peace I was having. She stopped. I removed all those nasty things on my credit and I was happy. Until now. I now know she will never stop. After 4 years of not opening anything in my name, she went back to it. So I'm putting my foot down and taking this step. I understand I should have pushed earlier. I really do. I was scared and I was naive, but I'm going to stop it today. Good on you, OP. Those are all the updates we have for that story right now. If there happen to be more updates I happen to catch on Reddit, I'll add this to the next video. Anyway, on to the next story. They called me a baby factory, so now they'll never see me again. Disclaimer, this is a very long rant covering multiple years. I have a horrible memory and I'm very emotional right now. I'm sorry if things are confusing. TLDR, my parents were chill growing up, but when I tried to establish any independence, they gaslit, manipulated, made fun of, and mentally abused me until I cut them off. They don't know I have, so this post is just to remind myself what they did for when they come crawling to me, sobbing about how good they are as parents, and I'm being terrible. I want to say first, I had a difficult childhood, but not because of them. I was a happy kid who had friends and was kind of adjusted, but we were poor, jumped across the US about twice, and my siblings and father were all disabled in different ways. Youngest sibling and dad, hard of hearing. Younger sister had brain and back injuries due to Kari malformation. Look it up, it's actually a very interesting disease. But when things started really changing was when I was in high school, around my junior year of school. I met a dude and we were best friends, then dated. Newsflash, he was a terrible person. It ended in me and my sister getting a restraining order against him, and both my siblings seeing and hearing things about me that they should never have been exposed to. I graduated high school even though I probably shouldn't have with my grades. I'm pretty sure my teachers just pitied me. And then after like a month, I got diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and depression. Go figure. Who could have guessed? I got Adderall, and it works great. For one day. Then it devolved into me having all-day panic attacks, vivid and extreme hallucinations, massive problems with an eating disorder, and an inability to control any emotion. It led to me backhanding my youngest sibling over a dispute involving the dishwasher. I still to this day would do anything to reverse it if I could. I don't remember that 3 months or so period. I have blocked out most of the memories because they were so mentally and emotionally taxing that just thinking about it makes me depressed. But at the time, I really thought my parents were doing everything they could to help me through that time. They could have done more, but I reasoned that they were working and didn't have all the time in the world to baby me, so I should have handled this myself. Eventually, all by myself, I decided to go cold turkey and went through withdrawals, which were almost as hellish as the actual meds themselves. Looking back now, I realize the only way my parents could have been more hands-off is if they had packed their bags and moved out. They didn't talk to me about anything. They didn't help me keep track of my symptoms. When I attacked my siblings, they didn't protect them from me, or me from myself. Now, as a 22-year-old on new meds, my doctor, just within the last month, looked at my old records and was appalled because I started me as an 18-year-old who was very new to meds and sensitive to them at a dose for grown adults, well into their Adderall usage. She told me they started me off at around 25 milligrams, which she normally prescribes around 5 to 10 for new users. So they didn't advocate for me at all during this mentally traumatic time. Immediately after being traumatized for almost a year, they took me to a therapist who noticed I was writing a story with an obvious self-insert and very influenced storylines from my day-to-day life. When she asked me to see my drawings and everything the next time, my mother pulled me down from therapy saying something I still remember to this day.
I didn't send you here so you could talk about your stories. I sent you here so you could talk about how your ex messed you up. She's not doing this fast enough.
Well, come the end of the summer, and even though I was still struggling with leaving the house for just a Walmart trip, they sent me to school for college across the state, and basically wiped their hands clean of me. I went into survival mode, believed my parents were right, and I needed this, so I did my best to fake it till I make it. I shouldn't have been there, but in the long run, it was what saved me. My friends I met there are some of the people who I've chosen as my family, and I met my current fiancée while there, through friends. Funnily enough, I wasn't allowed off campus, even though my parents lived about 2.5 hours away and wouldn't have known otherwise. It took convincing for one of my friends to go about 2 hours in another direction, and it's where I met my fiancée. My parents really didn't like Connor, but they did like the free labor he did for them and how mature he was to keep me in line for them. Now they could pawn off the driving around and emotions on him, because they never bothered to teach me how to drive or get a job or regulate my emotions. Connor could do all of that quite well, though, so they let him teach it to me. But whatever the idea of him got bought up as a boyfriend, they would clam up. They didn't want me to date anyone, not after my ex. I thought it was just them worrying about me after a traumatic period, and I was grateful for it. Connor helped us move like 5 times. He did free things for my parents all the time, and he was nothing but respectful the entire time he's known them. But eventually, they moved out to the same city I was going to college, and I was going through a hard patch again. The V had hit at the end of my freshman year, and now they were living here with my college town, and I started half online school for my sophomore year. Living with my parents again was hell. I was used to it at this point, living in a dorm, wanting to come and go as I pleased. My friends got me rides, and I fought and fought and fought to get a job, until one day I applied anyways and started working at a McDonald's. I was doing terribly in school. I didn't want to be in it anymore. Distance learning was difficult for me, and they weren't doing anything to help me. I was slowly becoming unaliving, wanting again, and I wanted nothing more than to find my own place. During this time, my dad was constantly working overtime, and one day when I was probably at my lowest, he made a joke that he was picking up all the overtime just to get away from me. I still remember it clear as day. I was mentally declining, becoming more and more erratic as time passes, because I was spiraling again, and they just sat by and watched it happen, while continuously judging me and making backhanded comments as I did, all the way up to the point I was not known for fashion and her hygiene. I was constantly self-conscious and didn't have control of my ADHD, so I was never one to doll myself up. But me and Connor were going to go on a date, so I grabbed my prettiest dress, some tights, and my favorite flats, and did my hair up all nice, and even tried makeup. I felt so pretty, and Connor was showing me with texts filled with compliments as he was on his way to pick me up. My mom and siblings got there first. My mom took one look at me and told me to go change. She busted out laughing, and she was hysterical over my outfit. She couldn't calm down, and the reason she was laughing was because I'm a big-chested girl and I'd gained weight as of recent, because my eating disorder. I was flipping from anorexia to binge eating. None of my clothes fit me. I was in tears and just put on my normal jeans and hoodie in almost 80-degree weather and ran to Connor's car in tears. They kept trying to call me back into the house, but I just had him drive off without speaking to them. I didn't stay the night at their house for almost 2 days. Mom spent that first night texting me that I was overreacting and that none of the clothes fit me, and yes, she could have been nicer, but honestly, I need to be realistic about my fashion if I'm going to attempt it. You couldn't tell at this point. My mom had picked almost every piece of clothing I owned, and because I wasn't anorexic anymore, she was very upset whenever I showed skin. Day-to-day life was getting worse by the day, but eventually I opened commissions. I posted on Facebook for family, and no one replied but my estranged grandmother on my mom's side, asking for an insanely difficult piece. I draw mostly pretty women in specific poses with pens and pencils, and that's it, especially then. She asked for a landscape drawing of her childhood home in realistic watercolor drawing that she didn't have any references for and hadn't seen since she was a kid. It was easily close, worth up to $150, maybe more because I'm terrible with commission prices. I offered it for $60. My mother asked if I was serious. I told her that 1, I disliked this woman to the point of purposefully not contacting her for almost a decade at that point. And 2, this was so far out of my comfort zone that I would have to learn new skills just to make it, and that's more than half off. And then my dad texted me asking if I was serious. It devolved into a pissing contest over who could be colder and how fast I could move out. It wasn't pleasant. I'll be the first to admit that. I was mentally unstable and lashing out at everyone. But I was also still a child who was recovering from the toll of drugs I was overprescribed on and their emotional indifference during a freaking pandemic. I emergency moved in with my fiancé, then boyfriend, and our friend who introduced us, and I didn't speak to them for a week. This is the beginning of their pattern that they pull literally to this day, regardless of the situation. They finally texted me back after about a week and a half and acted as if nothing happened, as if they hadn't kicked me out. I hadn't fought with them for days at this point, and we hadn't exchanged some sort of glances and short phrases of our lives to each other. They wanted to talk about the football game and trivial things in their lives. I didn't know what else to do. It was my family, and they were giving me the pass to be let back in, after I had mentally prepared myself to be shunned forever at this point. Of course, I took the olive branch. Maybe we'd speak about this in the future and laugh about how stuck up we had been. It could all change for the better, maybe. Me and my fiancé lived there for a year or so before we contemplated moving to the town we had met in and he grew up in. His whole family was there, and our current apartment was crawling with drug dealers, people stalking us for his old car, and people taking dumps in the hallway. It was only an idea at that point, nothing concrete. But when I floated the idea to my dad one day, when he was driving me home, he went on a rant about how it would become a baby factory for Connor if I moved away from my support system, and his family would turn me into their pawn because I was, frankly, too mentally weak of a person to not be swayed by them. He ranted for a long time and dumped a lot of info when random talked about how he kind of regretted having me and my siblings because he had us so young and regrets moving across the country like we did because of money problems. I asked him if he just told me he regrets having us and living in this state, and he went, "I did not just say that. Don't put words in my mouth." I went into my apartment and sobbed for a good few hours. Connor was pissed but optimistic, because he was talking. We both wrote off the bad parts and tried to move forward, hoping that this meant he would be open talking more often in the future. We moved to my fiancé's old home. Things were fine for a while. The longer I didn't live next to my family, the more I realized that I couldn't mentally handle them anymore. They had been so mean and gaslighted so much. Slowly but surely, I was feeding my parents an info diet and was placing my boundaries. There was a lot of mean-spirited comments thrown my way. Then they used Connor for more labor during this time, then keeping him at arm's length and refusing to acknowledge that we were serious and looking to move in together. Nothing of significance happened for about a year and a half, until within the last year. It's 2022 now, and me and Connor have lived together for most of 3 years or so now. We've been together. We're living in our own home. I'm working 2 jobs and we're both happy. Stressed, but happy. Mom texts in our group chat that she wants me to give up my jobs and move back to their town and become a mailman like my dad. She swears that it's a government job with government pay and benefits, and it's the best thing I can do as a college dropout who's working 2 jobs. I replied back that I was making almost $1,300 a paycheck with both jobs and just moved into my house, and that the town she lived in was absolutely terrible. Remember my old apartment? That's all that's available there, and I wasn't keen to move back now that I had a 3-bed house that's completely quiet and all my own. She responds by calling me 4 times in one day, spam texted the group chat, and spams my DMs, and sending Connor multiple texts, and then calling me again. I spent 2 days ignoring her before I finally replied. I answered her calls, and she spends almost the entire time during a 15-minute call that I put on speakerphone for Connor to listen to quietly trying to manipulate me by calling me again a college dropout and telling me I'm not happy there. I'm so far away from my family, and there's no point in living there, especially since my jobs were working me to death, and they had nowhere near the benefits of this mail carrier job as a government job. I didn't have the heart or the verbal space to tell her that the U.S. Postal Service is in fact not a government entity. It was privately owned. I did tell her all of my benefits I wouldn't need till I was 26. I had all of the supposed benefits from my dad also having the same job. She glossed over that and talked over me to try and explain how miserable I was in that town. I told her I had to go, and I hung up. Thanksgiving comes, my entire extended aunts and uncles on my dad's side come and stay with us. Things are looking good, and I'm having fun with my family for once. Then I overheard my mom whispering to my uncle that my entire personality is just Connor. I don't have any semblance of self anymore, and I even moved away just to become Connor's girl. My uncle didn't react and didn't say anything, but I had to hide away just to compose myself, because I almost went nuclear and lost my mind. Another time skip. Now we're in the present and getting closer to the end of our story. Connor proposed to me the day before Christmas Eve, surrounded by his incredibly loving family, and putting my ring in my stocking, and it was beautiful. The first person I called was my best friend, and then the second was my mother. It was close to 1 a.m., and this time I got her on the phone. I told her I knew it was late, but I was engaged. She told me in no uncertain terms, "Honey, that's amazing, but don't text in the family group chat or anything, 'cause your dad's asleep and he has to get up at 5 a.m. Congrats, I'm going to bed." Neither of them contacted me about my engagement for almost a week, until I went back for their Christmas. I went with my best friend, and the entire time my family talked down to me, misremembered my size, and instead of apologizing, they insisted I didn't know my size and that I was indeed an XXL. I'm a medium to large, and started the night off by my mom mentioning my engagement only once. It started off with my mom suddenly in the middle of things going good and everyone laughing. She starts cackling and goes, "Oh, your dad and friends had the funniest thing to say about your engagement. Dad, show her the texts." Dad just smiles and he starts giggling too. My siblings laugh along with them, and Dad says, "Oh, Amir just thought it was nuts that you were engaged 'cause you're so young." I asked to see the texts. Maybe I misunderstood him. Maybe it had to be something funny, based on their reactions, 'cause that was very much not funny at all, especially when I had my best friend sitting right there listening. If anything, it was embarrassing. I read the texts and it goes something like, "Dude, she's engaged? That's nuts. She's too young and it's going to end too quickly." "Dad, I know, I'm upset and struggling right now because all of my kids are forcing themselves to grow up right now when they aren't ready to, and it's hard to stand by and watch them crash and burn like they inevitably will and then do nothing about it." I just smiled because when they all laughed and giggled about how funny it was, I was struggling to not burst into tears and scream at them. My friend pulled me aside and asked multiple times if we should leave. At the time, I was using their car, so I told her no. I was going to play nice until I could give it back, and then once I was in their hands again, I was going to go no contact. Connor was supposed to come down and see them and spend Christmas with them, but he couldn't face them knowing that this is what they willingly showed us, especially after Thanksgiving. After this, I bought a car, my first car that's all mine, and I got their car back to them just last week. I'm putting my life together. I'm learning how to do the beginning of adult things well past I should have. I learned to drive, pay bills, budget, and spend, and how to exist all for my fiancée. I had to forcibly teach myself how to manage my own mental health, with the help of my fiancé and friends. I'm done making up excuses as to why I need them in my life. I don't want to deal with the body shaming, the classist behavior, the looking down on Connor for no reason. I can't handle it anymore. I called my uncle, the one from Thanksgiving, and explained to him my decisions, and he immediately told me he supports me and that my parents don't know how to treat us like adults. That I'm not a screw-up, and that I was the first thing in my life that I realized my parents had conditioned me into thinking I was, in fact, a screw-up. So, Mom or Dad, or anyone in the family, if you find this, there are reasons why I blocked everyone's numbers and deleted Messenger, why me and Connor have our statements and info ready for when you send a welfare check to tell them to leave us alone. I'm going to get married, and you won't be there. I won't let you. If I have a child, you won't see them. I don't care how much you cry and make me feel like I did something wrong. I'm not a bad person for being screwed up, and the things you hold over my head were things I did as a drugged up child, a child you should have protected, and should have protected my siblings from. Frick you, frick all your attempts at communication that you never did, but say you have. Thank you to everyone who reads this. I just needed to yell. When they eventually find out I cut them off, because I made no warning beforehand, and just dipped after the car was no longer in my hands. They will freak out. If anything memorable happens, I'll make an update. But probably not. And then, lo and behold, we've got an update. Update. They called me a baby factory. Hi again, everyone. It's been about a month since my 2 a.m. pity party. I want to say thank you for the overwhelming support I received on the other post. Especially the person who mentioned that my parents were fine with abusing me, but not my siblings since they were physically unwell, rather than mentally unwell like me. That one hit home probably harder than any other comment. I didn't think of it that way, but honestly, it was something someone probably should have said. I'd like to apologize for how rambly and long the last post was. I was in the middle of a panic attack and had been ignoring calls and texts from them for days. I felt like a horrible person and was gaslighting myself into going almost no contact with them again. The post was for myself to understand and write out all the mean things they've done, so I could look back and read and be like, wow, they really reduced me to that, huh? But for the actual update, I returned their car to them, and after that, I vanished. I blocked off all of my family's phone numbers, but left my siblings unblocked and open on all social media. I didn't want their numbers to be used to contact me unless it was them. Their numbers, since they've been unblocked. My parents didn't notice at first. I just got a text from Mom saying she was trying as hard as she could. I was just pulling away, and she doesn't know why. I might post some of the screenshots of my conversations with them sometime in the future, so you can marvel at how self-centered they were. It was mostly my mom for a bit, nothing really from Dad. Then one day she texted that she was going to give me space because I wasn't talking to them for some reason, and she ceased all contact after that. It was quiet for about a week. Then Dad started calling me. My phone shows me the caller ID and the time they called, but blocks the call itself, so I got to see almost every morning for about a week or so that I missed a call from him. Then he started texting me and tried to use the age-old tactic of intimidation to get me to talk to him. It was mostly just, "You better answer the phone right now." Then he'd call a bunch. Then he'd finally send a text about a week ago, being cryptic about how I wouldn't know about all this stuff till after it happened. And if I was going to act like a child, then these are the consequences. I kinda just rolled my eyes and didn't respond. Turns out, after skimming the family group chat, that he's been diagnosed with pretty bad carpal tunnel syndrome in both of his hands and has a severe lower back injury that they've yet to figure out. He also suffers from a myriad of other illnesses right now, but still forces himself to work 60 plus hours as a postal carrier, so I don't know what he expects. To be honest, this might make me a bad person, but I really didn't care. If it had been about my siblings, I would have probably jumped on the phone and been freaking out. But I don't hold feelings besides resentment, confusion, and anger with my parents anymore. So this news didn't really faze me. In better news, Connor has received a few raises due to county regulations being changed, and I now also have a job with the county. I'll be moving on to my own insurance and finally moving on to it without worrying about contact. I also learned right about that time that my parents had taken out 5 different loans in my name to pay for college, all varying about to up to $12,000. They didn't explain this to me and had apparently been paying them all for the past 3 years. So I have credit, I guess, to figure out when I thought I did it. So yippee. I have to figure out a way to transfer into my name and figure out the logistics. But yeah, that's a thing now. My siblings haven't contacted me. The middle one is extremely angry with my behavior and wants me to contact my mom at least. I've just avoided the topic with her. My other sibling, I can't honestly tell you how they feel, but they apparently plan to move into a big city about 4 hours away for college in the coming years. So let's hope they go through it the same transformation I did. And that's honestly about it. Lots of weird texts that they did nothing but stress themselves out with, and my financial situation is looking up. We also bought a dog recently. Her name is Mandy, and our other dog, Copper, is still getting used to her. So my days are occupied mostly with taking care of a German Shepherd puppy who body slams me awake at 6 a.m. every day. I hope everyone has a great day. And thank you all again for the wonderful and supportive comments on my last post. You go, OP! Good on you! Get out of that situation.
Hey, can I borrow your attention for a little second? You see, I'm saving up for some equipment items, like a VR headset so I can record in VR chat, or a new AT2020 mic. You can help me fund these by going to my throne in the description below. I'll leave it on the top to help you find it. If you enjoy my video, please check it out. Now, that's the end of today's video. I'll see you later.